Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hormone Helper podcast. I'm Coach Andrew, your hormone helper from Fit for All Fitness. I personally coach over 1,600 men and women to help better understand their hormones so they can lose weight and get their metabolism back on track. With this podcast, you're going to hear from me and my special guests about everything from metabolism to thyroid to weight loss. And we even talk a little bit of sexy time as we chat to spread more knowledge thick like butter on your hormones. If you're ready to learn, I'm ready to share, so let's do this. Hey crew, I hope your day is going fantastic, and if not, we are going to make it fantastic together by taking 5 seconds to smile and yell, I quit. That's it, I'm done. Just kidding. Here's yet to another interesting topic coming straight out of 2 consults I had recently. I feel like there has been an issue, and this issue has been a long time. That's the issue of restriction. People, I feel like they're always on some type of diet where they're either refraining from eating carbs or cutting out fats or cutting breakfast from their routine. Somebody's always cutting out something in their life. And I think in today's world, people really get 2 common misconceptions that really cause them to spiral out of control when it comes to taking care of themselves. The first misconception is more is better. And the second is that all or nothing. People are used to transactional lifestyles at this point where they click a button and whatever they click comes to them same day, next day, just like Amazon. But with yourself and with your health, or really with any other personal goal you're trying to achieve, real change and changes that you're taking on yourself, they take time. You can't force faster change. And if you somehow manage to do that, it's always going to come at yet another cost to you that you didn't foresee, like money, stress, maybe your relationships, injuries, and other stuff. So there's always a cost. And the one thing that the health industry has really sucked at is openly disclosing what actually has to happen for someone to see the results that they are looking for. Right now, people are conditioned for those quick fixes. Couple of things when it comes to these quick fixes. They pick up supplements that burn fat or super increase some level of one of your hormones. They have surgeries that reduce fat and shrink your stomach so you can eat more. They do extreme workouts backed up by professionals on a DVD to make their core tighter. And of course, they wear all these kinds of things like cell wraps and core bands to help them sweat more. More supplements, more pills, more shakes, more dosage. The more I take, the better and faster my results will be. Except that's not what happens with results. They take the stuff and then it doesn't work. Or then we come to that all or nothing mentality, where it's going to be, I'll cut everything out of my routine, no snacks, no restaurant outings, no salt, no carbs, no fats, no air, if that's what gets them to see their results faster. These quick fixes, we all know that they don't work. Crazy thing is, I'm sure you can at least think of 5 people right now who have tried or are doing some crazy type of extreme fix to help them on their health journey. The worst for this is around the types of food diets that people put themselves on. There are more than I can count for sure, but I want to go through all of the extreme ones that I hear on consults pretty commonly. And it's because these types of diets really hurt your hormones and they have an impact on the ability that your body produces itself. So I want to list them all because there's a ton and I get so many questions on Facebook about it. But I want to go through and basically list why these things can be challenge for your hormones itself. So the common ones that I get: intermittent fasting, carb cycling or no carb, those are kind of the same thing. The keto diet, the carnivore diet, and the vegan diet. Of course, there's a million other ones, but these are the main ones that I hear every single day. I feel like it's the ones that are very catchy and people think are a lot easier to do, but they don't realize that there's a lot of work. So I do want to go through these quickly so you can see why they are a challenge. But first, I want to share the difference of doesn't work and didn't work, because there's a difference between the two, which realistically I shouldn't have to, but so many people, even my clients in the Fit Fam before working with us, they believe that everything that they changed within their lifestyle or food at one point worked, but then it like stopped for some reason and it stopped working, right? Like some magical being came down and said, no more weight loss for you. And I'm sure that that didn't happen. At least I certainly hope so. Here's what it didn't work means to me. So it didn't work to start. So number one, if you see results for a bit, but then lose those results doing the same thing, it didn't work. Number two, if you see those results, but then you can't maintain the results after making the change, it didn't work. Number three, you only saw the results doing that thing the first time, but then after repeating the same process, it didn't change you again, it didn't work. Number four, if you stop doing what you were doing and then you revert back to the way you were before, it didn't work. Those are all the things that clearly means it didn't work. It didn't function. It never did. And although you saw temporary results, there wasn't anything that worked. Now let's talk about it doesn't work, because that's different. It doesn't work means this: there is something that is going on or something that you are doing that it prevents it from working for you. So not every single thing that you have tried doesn't work. Because clearly, if other people are doing it and it does work for them, there is something going on. But everyone has different hormone levels. Everyone has a different body type. Everyone has a different metabolism. And everyone is doing things a little bit differently. So chances are, if you are trying to do something and there's something that's going on or something that you are doing prevents you from it working for you, it doesn't work. So that's the difference between it didn't and it doesn't. And that's really clear, because when talking about someone going on a diet or we're talking about someone going on a routine, you need to understand the differences, because people are always very quick to point to what they're doing as the source of the, I tried this diet, but it didn't work. But the thing is like a lot of the times it's what you're doing, how you're doing it, or your body type that is the reason why these things didn't work in the first place. But there are a lot of diets that, of course, causes hormonal issues. So back to these diets: the intermittent fasting, carb cycling, no carb, keto, carnivore diet, and the vegan one. Here's what they are supposed to do, but don't actually do 99% of the time. Let's start with intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting isn't so much of a diet as really it's an eating strategy. And that's where you consume all of your calories in a set time period, and then you fast for the rest of the day. So there's very different approaches to intermittent fasting, with the most popular being an 8-16 split. So that means that you're going to consume your calories in an 8-hour eating window, and then you're going to fast, which means you're not going to eat for the other 16 hours in the day. You can do tons of different splits. Like you can do a 10-16, you can do a 16-10, or you can do a 6-20. So the first number being how many hours you eat or have to eat, and then the second number being how many hours you fast for. So it's an eating and fasting split. Some extremists, they really go as far as to squeezing a whole day's worth of calories into a single hour. The concept with intermittent fasting is that you're going to be eating fewer calories since you're squeezing them into a narrower time frame, as opposed to consuming them throughout the day. And then during the fasting period, you're allowed 0-calorie beverages such as black coffee, herbal teas, sparkling water. That's how intermittent fasting is supposed to work. Here is the problem with intermittent fasting: lifestyle. People cannot consistently accommodate their window forever. And it takes about 4 months of consistent intermittent fasting for you to see the benefits from intermittent fasting. And I'll go through the benefits in a second. So the challenge is when people are doing intermittent fasting, you have to do that every single day, or if you're doing it 3 times a week, those same 3 days in the week, same time frame, and it must be done consistently for 4 months. Now, that's 4 months at a minimum. Besides that, as the challenge, there's the next problem, which is during your fasting period, you cannot have anything that kicks you out of a fast. Meaning nothing calorie-wise, nothing carb-wise, nothing energy-wise. It's just 0-calorie stuff. Otherwise, you will kick yourself out of the fast and it will stop working because you will stop fasting. So the problem with that is it's not realistic. You are not going to be able to maintain an eating window where you're fasting 16 hours a day the rest of your life. Now, the goal and the benefit of intermittent fasting is you are supposed to, in your fasting window, increase what's called growth hormone in your body. So the longer you fast, the more your body produces growth hormone. Now, even if you're doing intermittent fasting correctly, The most change that your growth hormone is going to experience over the span of 4 months is about a 2 to 3% increase. That's not enough of a hormonal change for someone to justify going through those entire stressors and sticking to that window absolutely religiously every single time. That's where the problem comes into play. So those two problems of the timing and you realistically being able to stick to it. Second thing is really this. When it comes to intermittent fasting, you still need to eat the same amount of calories, but within that window. So for someone like myself who's 180 pounds right now, and I eat 6 meals a day, I got to fit 6 meals worth of nutrition in 8 hours. And if you're doing a shorter window, you have to eat the same amount of food in that time, because otherwise you're going to be short on nutrients. So what ends up happening is when people do intermittent fasting, they're not sticking to their window periods, which takes them off of the fast. They're eating things within the fasting period, which takes them off of the fast. And they're not getting enough nutrients during the times that they should be eating, which is going to kick them out. So all of this comes down to the body being short of nutrients or not being in a fasted state, which means that your hormones are not going to benefit from this. So instead of seeing that 2 to 3% increase in growth hormone, you're just shorting yourself and eating in weird times and weird windows, and you end up going into starvation mode. This is going to lead to cravings. This is going to lead to absolute hunger during the times when you're fasting. This is going to lead to irritability, especially during your fasting period. Plus, it's going to screw up your hormones like crazy. So that are the issues that comes with intermittent fasting. The next is essentially carb cycling. So carb cycling or a low carb diet is essentially when you're going to be, the whole purpose of carbs period in your diet is to provide glycogen, which is sugar based fuel. So when we consume a carb, we break the carb down, we're getting the sugar, and whatever sugar is left that our body stores, that's what we get to use for energy through the day. So the body's going to slowly pull from that glycogen storage, that pool of sugar, to help us function throughout the day. Now, carb cycling or low carb is basically doing a couple things. If you're choosing to cycle the carbs, it means you're going to have high carb days, medium carb days, and low carb days. So on the days where you work out, you're going to keep your carbs higher to medium. And on the days where you don't do activity, you keep them medium to low. So the idea is you're only fueling your body's carbs on the days where you absolutely need to use carbs. Otherwise, you're just going to rely on the fat that you have on your body. Low carb is basically all of your days are low or close to zero, and you're relying on the fats in your diet or the fat on your body. So the idea of carb cycling is it is supposed to help burn the fat stores that you have stored by allowing fat to be a very readily available source of fuel. So the carbs you finish very quickly because you're eating so little of them, and then you get to solely use onto the fats. Now, ideally, that sounds like, wow, like I can just, eat a little bit of carbs and then all of a sudden I can cycle into my fat stores. The challenge when it comes to carb cycling is really this. Your energy level is going to be all over the freaking place. Because when you have high carb days, you're going to have high energy. When you have low carb days, you're going to have low energy. Because your body is conditioned to using carbs as a main fuel. So where I see a lot of this, where people screw up their hormones from this, is essentially their carbs are either extremely low to the point where their body is in desperate need of carbs, or they're on the high carb days, people are overeating, and then it's kicking them out of that cycle and they're not using the fat for fuel. If it's too low, the body's going to store fat because it's afraid that it's not going to get food. And if it's too high, you're just going to put fat on because you're overeating. So carb cycling isn't practical, again, because you have to keep the cycling consistent. So the moment you kick off of the cycling, you're not receiving the benefits of the fat. And then two, you either risk under eating or overeating with carb cycling, which is what people normally do. If you continue to short yourself of carbs, and carbs is basically that main fuel for glycogen, your thyroid is going to have to make up the difference between that. So it's a really hard stressor on your thyroid, which ultimately affects your hormone panel. And that's where I see a lot of people go wrong with carb cycling is they're not doing it right, and then their thyroid gets all messed up. Now, onto the keto diet or ketogenic diet. So, keto, as it's called for short, it's a diet that prioritizes fat, which is essentially 65 to 75% of your daily nutrients, with little protein, so about 15 to 20%, and literally zero carbs. Like you've got less than 5% of carbs, though some versions of keto actually say no carbs whatsoever. Keto was designed to keep the body in a near constant state of ketosis. So, ketosis is a metabolic state where the body creates what's called ketones from fat, and those ketones are used as energy instead of sugar from carbs. So, when we talked about the carb cycling, the sugar from carbs is the main fuel source. For the ketogenic diet, ketones acts as the sugar or a sugar replacement. So this now becomes your body's primary and preferred energy source. There's also been claims that it may help, of course, treat cancer and even respiratory illnesses, but really the keto stuff hasn't been confirmed for that yet. So here's the problem when it comes to keto. Actually, let me talk about the ideal function of keto. So the ideal function of keto is you're keeping your fat intake very high. You're keeping your protein minimal to, like I said, 10, 15% of your diet. And then there's very, very little carbs, less than 5% carbs. So by using fats for fuel, and your body permanently converts fats into a fuel state, you are using fuel all the time because there's always fat on your body. So you become a fat furnace. Your metabolism increases, your metabolism speeds up because there's always a readily available fuel source to pass. Here's the problem. There is not a single person that I have ever met that has ever ate keto clean and that has ever eat keto with a minimum 5% carbs, because less than 5% carbs or no carbs is almost impossible to do, because everything that is a preservative most likely comes in a refined carb state. So that means you can't buy any boxed food, period. You can't even have apples or fruits because guess what? Fruits have carbs in them. And it's damn near impossible for people to keep ketosis long term. So what happens is people just eat incredibly low carbs. They undereat for the carbs. And then they're still not into ketosis, so they're not switching fat for fuel. And they get what's called the keto flu, which is where they feel like garbage being in a fat state. So what ends up happening with that is you just end up eating an excessive amount of fat, and then you get really oily stools. Your digestion slows down. It becomes hard for you to process. Your cortisol spikes because you become incredibly stressed. Oh yeah, and then you start gaining weight as well too. So keto is only realistic if you can maintain ketosis, and ketosis has to be maintained as long as you are on the keto diet. So the moment you stop eating less than the 5% carbs, or you stop intaking that high fat, you are out of keto and you lose the benefits. You lose the benefits of that fat burning. So a lot of times people who do keto, they're not within those right percentages. So they're just under eating for themselves. And then the body becomes stressed because it's not getting the nutrients it needs, which throw out your hormone system. The second thing with keto is to eat keto properly, you have to eat high fat and the moderate protein. There are not a lot of things that give high fat and moderate protein. So people are resorted to use these, keto alternatives, or to buy these like weird, make-believe sausages. I call them make-believe sausages, but it's like these proteins that are altered or man-made from humans, or they have to eat incredibly organic, which they don't do. So they end up shorting themselves on protein, which means that their muscles waste, and they just end up eating high fat and high poor quality fat, which at the end of the day ends up setting that off. Keto is the one that everybody tries at least once in their life, and maybe they lose the first 5 pounds and then they realize that they're craving carbs like crazy and they're feeling like garbage, and then they have to stay off of it, which is why people don't revisit keto a lot. Carnivore diet. The carnivore diet is these devotees, I'll call them. They only eat animal-based products. So essentially anything that is solely from an animal. So this is meat, cheese, milk, animal-based fats, and eggs, although some variations only allow meat. So no eggs, no dairy. There are no grains, no vegetables, and no fruits. That is not a joke. It's also known as essentially the zero carb diet. It's basically a variation of keto since it's fat and protein and it's prioritized over carbs. So this diet approach, basically, it's supposed to prove that, limiting your carb and your vegetable intake can improve your cardiovascular health. Okay. Basically, the people who do this claim that it can fight inflammation and prevent nutrient deficiencies. And there is proof that it can lead to weight loss because of the protein increase, but only if you're consistent with it for longer than a 3-month period. So here's what's wrong with the carnivore diet. I said it from the beginning. There's no vegetables. There's no carbs, period. 90% of the micronutrients that are coming to your diet, the zinc, the magnesium, the potassium, the calcium, the vitamin A, the B vitamins, they come from vegetables. So sure, you're getting the macronutrients that your body needs, the protein and the fats to build the lean muscle tissue. But in the long run, you are depriving your hormone panel of the micronutrients, which are all of those vitamins and minerals. So your body stops producing certain vitamins, and then you're unable to keep up with it. So you're going to start to develop deficiencies from this. So vitamin B deficiencies, vitamin C deficiencies, potassium deficiencies. Sure, you'll be okay in iron. You'll be okay in anything that's involved in meat, but you're going to be short these other nutrients that are responsible for building your thyroid hormones, for building your testosterone, for building your progesterone. And slowly over the course, you're going to experience muscle wasting. You're going to experience a slower metabolism. You're going to experience slower digestion, and that's going to come on with weight gain. So the carnivore diet is not a realistic thing to maintain long-term. Temporarily, it helps with weight loss because really you're just cutting out all of your carb and your energy sources, which is acting more of like a keto base. So that's where that benefit comes from, but it's not realistic to maintain long-term because you're not getting any nutrients required for you to be able to actually have and support a healthy hormone panel. Now, let's talk about the vegan diet. Vegan diet is the absolute polar opposite of the carnivore diet. You're not going to have anything meat. You're not going to have anything fish. And basically, it's only carbs and vegetables. So the purpose of this is essentially cutting out the processed meats and cutting out anything that comes from a animal-based source, and you're going to do it just via vegan. Now, you can get a ton of protein sources just going vegan way. Here's the challenge with vegan. There's nothing wrong with being vegan at all. And there are a lot of our clients who are very successful being vegan vegetarian for morality reasons, and that's fine. The problem is people eat poor quality vegan, or people aren't actually eating vegan and don't understand what vegan is. You cannot have any protein or any animal-based things from vegan. That means you must get your protein intake from something else. Do you know how hard it is to get your protein from just vegetables and carbs? It is so hard, especially someone like me who needs 180 grams of protein. If I have a 6-ounce piece of steak, that's 32 grams of protein on average. So that's like, almost 20% of my intake just from that. To do that vegan, like for example, if you had an entire salad bowl of broccoli, you'd maybe get like 15 grams of protein. So you literally have to eat triple the amount of vegetables to get the same amount of nutrient intake. And a lot of people do not eat enough on vegan. They don't. They do not get enough of the nutrients required, which means they're shorting their hormone panel. So they think they're eating 3 meals a day, but their meals need to be significantly larger because there's not enough of those nutrients to get into the sources. The second thing with that is people eat vegan and then they start going to non-meat alternatives. So they're getting like Beyond Meat burgers or like I can't believe it's not beef patties or whatever. And those types of things, they have a lot of plant-based stuff, but all of those plant-based meat alternatives are high in estrogen, just like soy is excessively high in estrogen. it's not bad if you eat it every once in a while. But if all of your protein sources are high in soy, you are getting excess estrogen into your diet, and it is going to basically lower your testosterone, which means you're going to put on more body fat, you're going to lose your muscle mass, and that's going to throw off your hormone panel too. So, vegan, can it be done? Of course it can be. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing vegan right, you're going to have excess levels of estrogen. You're going to be short on nutrients, and that's not going to be sustainable for your hormone panel long term. So those are the main ones that I wanted to talk about. There are many more of these diets, but I'm not going to list them because the real focus on today's podcast is basically how all of these hurt your hormones instead of helping them. And I think I've done a pretty clear job on listing how it hurts. Ultimately, your body's hormone panel, it's like the hair on your skin. If it's spread too thinly, it doesn't cover anything. If it's spread too thickly, you're going to have excess where you don't want it. And if it's spread too unevenly, you're going to get clogged areas with too much clumping. And that's not going to be good from hormones. This is exactly what happens when your body has been through extreme dieting or improper dieting for a really long period of time. So let's go through these and put some examples on them. Okay. When you don't have enough of a hormone, the body is forced to either take from another hormone source or to short you from whatever hormone you need. So this shows up in our clients and lives either mainly as two things, as excess cortisol in your body or as excess estrogen normally. And here's how this works. Testosterone and estrogen, they take from their friend progesterone. That's kind of the precursor to these two. So if you're constantly short on the nutrients for testosterone or constantly short on the nutrients for estrogen, your body is going to steal from the hormone progesterone to make one of the other two. Ultimately, that theft, the thyroid has to make up the difference. And there's going to be a point where you can't steal anymore. So then it's just going to stop producing those hormones. So you're going to get an excess high of testosterone or an excess high in estrogen, depending on what you eat or what that's like. Being too high or too low of one is not good. It's going to throw your hormone panel off, and your stressor hormones are going to have to focus to do this. So another thing that steals is your cortisol. So your cortisol steals from your thyroid. So whenever one of these hormones, whether it's testosterone and estrogen, are taking from each other and your thyroid has to take the place, your hormone cortisol is going to get super stressed out and it's going to say, I need support. And it's going to get to a point where it doesn't ask for the support, where it just takes the support. And your thyroid is that one that kind of supports all of the hormones, period. So it's going to take from the thyroid. Over and over again, you're going to have this issue where the thyroid is going to start to slow down because it cannot meet the needs of all the stealing that's going on. Now, in the example of that diet that gives you too much hormone, or the diet that makes you excess, like that intermittent fasting, or even your full vegan diet, that's going to basically raise your growth hormone or raise your estrogen. With stuff like this, when you go through the intermittent fasting point and you're increasing the levels of growth hormone, or when you go through full vegan and you're increasing the levels of estrogen, it's going to pass a certain threshold where you're going to be in a high state. When you get too high of one hormone, your body is then going to start either slowing down production of that hormone because it's like, wow, we're in a high state, I don't need to make as much. Or it's going to start directing the flow of that hormone to another hormone. And you're going to get hormone seepage to another place. So what happens with people with intermittent fasting is they see results for the first 4 months. And then they stop seeing results because that excess high of growth hormone is so high that the body shuts it down. So they're like, I don't get it. So, of course, that all or nothing mentality. Let me make my windows more extreme. Let me go from 8 hours to 6 hours, 6 hours to 4 hours, 4 hours to 2 hours. And then they don't see any more benefits. And with the full vegan, that estrogen becomes so high that the body just shuts down estrogen production. And then you start packing on weight like crazy. Because estrogen and fat, they go hand in hand. They talk to each other. And finally, this last example is that diet that makes your hormone and energy come in waves. So this is essentially where your carb cycling and when your low carb diets would be. So Every time we're doing the carb cycling, every time you have a high carb day, those hormones are coming up really, really high. And then you have low carb and the body's like, well, I don't have the energy to make them, so I'm going to tank it down. This leaves you with an inconsistent metabolism. This leaves you with inconsistent energy. This leaves you with lack of clarity, lack of mental focus, and it's going to start to affect your body's energy production. Ultimately, energy production affects metabolism production. So here's what I want you to get from this podcast today. You got to stop these dumb diets and these routines. They don't serve you. They're very difficult to keep up. And on top of that, when not done right, they destroy your metabolism, which makes it more likely that you're going to have to go to the doctor to see what's wrong after you crash. Everyone at some point has done anywhere from 3 to 4 diets, but that's what's essentially going to help. Now, I get it. Some of you at this point have been on and off diets your entire life. Dieting might be something that's ingrained as a part of who you are right now. But I can tell you that can be changed, because a lot of our clients who work with me through our Hormone Reboot program, they had either started on or were still on a diet when they joined our program. But during their journey, we talked about rewiring their brain so they could focus less on dieting and tracking. So instead, we focused more on their relationship with food so that they can see the weight loss results that they want. They can have stable energy and metabolism. They can gain a crazy amount of focus while still be able to go out with their friends and family to the restaurants and the outings that they need. Food freedom is just as important as hormone stability, and the quality of life depends on your journey with your food. Now, would you rather struggle with it every day, weighing each portion, constantly tracking macros, and being unable to eat at all certain times because you're on a weird window? Probably not. I don't think that's realistic. Me and my wife, Lorna, we don't do that, and I don't want that for my clients. I'm sure you're just like everyone else that wants to enjoy their freaking life without having to take a lunch bag of pre-prepped stuff everywhere they go. Because I remember when I used to do that, it sucked. I hated it, and it was not fun. Diets don't work. So instead, transition to sustainable eating. That eating is right for your body and your hormones. Now, before you go, I mentioned the last episode that I'm actually going to be launching 5 masterclasses, and the first one is going to be at the end of this month. And the very first masterclass has finally been selected. So I've made a choice. I'm going to be doing our first masterclass called Drop Your First 10 Pounds Before Summer Ends. And it's going to be on July 28th, which is a Thursday in the evening. So there's only 30 spots available for the masterclass, and I'm going to be showing you the powerful tools I use with our Fit Fam to help you drop those first 10 pounds naturally and keep it off in a sustainable way. The masterclass is going to be done live via our Facebook group. So to join, you're going to need to do a couple of things. Real simple. 1, go to the show notes. 2, click the link that says register VIP for the masterclass, and then you're going to fill out your info so I can send you the links and the details. That's literally it. So show notes, click the link to register, fill out your info. Real simple. And then I'll send you the links and the details. Now, after the 30 spots have been filled, there's not going to be any more room available, as I like to keep my training and my coaching tight-knit. This is so that way I can support everyone in the best way possible, like I do with our group coaching program. I personally find that if you learn that, you end up learning just as much from others when they share their challenges and questions than just learning from me alone. So I am super excited to launch the first masterclass, and this is only going to open up more opportunities for me to teach you and for you to learn and progress through your health and your wellness journey. I appreciate you listening today. Take care and catch you later. Well, it seems I'm all out of info juice for today. That's all for this episode, and thank you so much for listening. Please leave a raving review for me if you've learned something good, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Now, if you're in the mood for some more great content and tools to get your hormones on track, why not check out our free Facebook group and the blog on our site. We do amazing weekly trainings in our group that me and my wife call Tea and Teachings that give good tips for anything hormones and metabolism related. It's also a great community where you get to share your goals and success with like-minded people just like you. I'll make sure to drop both the Facebook group link and the blog link in the show notes for you. Or if you're ambitious like me, the name of the group is Weight Loss and Balanced Hormones. It'll say Fit for All beside it with a picture of me. So come and join us and have more fun.